I want winners. I want people that want to win.
So Big Mike Singletary wanted some winners, and the Niners did just that today in Carolina. Though I would say, I don't know, the first half, you just wanted to see them pull away. It's very clear the 49ers were the much more talented, better coached team. And yet the Panthers were hanging in there. And I was just frustrated going like, man, I wanted them to boat race these guys so we can rest some of these big time players we have because we have all these injuries. And unfortunately, we couldn't. And that did bite us a little bit near the end. We're going to have to see. We'll talk about the injuries first. But overall, Rod, just quick thoughts on the 3 hours of football that we just saw.
I've been watching so much football that it didn't surprise me that it wasn't the boat race that we all kind of hoped it would be. It just seems like even these bad teams, Carolina, their defense is fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. And even before the big injury we're going to talk about with Nick, they did a serviceable job keeping us from pressuring. I mean, we pressured them, but there weren't any big sacks or anything. Because you look at the stats at the end, and it seemed like Baker was under siege. But watching the game, it didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
So it was a solid win. There was a lot to be happy about. A few things that are a concern, but overall, good win.
I want to say what's up to our guy Shelvin who's checking in. Shelvin, always the star of our chats, our live game chats in our Facebook group. So I'm gonna start with this because they by the end of the game, 37-15, I believe, is what the last score was. So we did get the boat race, but it took until the fourth quarter that they just worn the Panthers down by then. But the big concern here are the injuries. Jimmy Ward came back. He was healthy his first game back, and he breaks his hand one play into the game, which is very unfortunate. Nick Bosa, he injured his groin. When it came to Shanahan talking about the injuries, it seemed like he was probably the least worried about that one. He just said tightness more so than anything else. And then Robbie Gould, I guess you don't teach kickers how to tackle because all he had to do really was just fall down to make two tackles, and he decided to go like straight up, standing straight up, and allowing the kick returner to just run him over both times. I thought I was like, is this a replay of the same play that we just saw? Because he falls exactly the same, but he can't kick, and so we see money making Mitch Wisnowski. He missed very badly on a longish PAT, and then another one I think got clipped, and he made that one. But they're probably gonna have to bring in some kickers. But then the last one, very late in the game, Emmanuel Mosley grabs his knee, and it sounds like the 49ers are worried possibly about an ACL. Shanahan only said that they're gonna have to do the MRI. But for a game in which, the team pretty much dominated the football game, coming out of it with four big time players for them on possibly on the injured list, it's got to be frustrating. And I know I'm frustrated because we still have NFL fields that have artificial turf, because that seems to have been some of the problems with some of the injuries today on the Panthers side as well. But yeah, this is a big thing, especially so early in the season. Now, we were kind of crowing about this earlier in the week when we heard that Ward and Verrett were possibly going to be healthy, just going like, wow, what an embarrassment of riches. You have so much talent on defense, but really what it is it's depth for stuff like this.
Exactly. So as I was saying in our chat when we were talking about, Verrett, obviously, number one, if he's healthy and he is still, we'll have to wait and see what kind of player he is. But I just, my concern as always is us backing ourselves into a situation where he is more than just depth. If we're like last season, after all he's been through, we managed ourselves into a position where we were counting on him to play 700-800 snaps, and that is that's not the place you want to be. We are 5 games in, so you're in a good spot. So now we're just asking him to be ready for 12 weeks, at in a limited role, hopefully.
Yeah.
But depending on what's going on with Mosley, we might be back in a situation where we're counting on Jason Verrett for a bunch of snaps, which again, when he is healthy and right, he's a very good player. He just can't seem to stay healthy. So that's the concern there. Obviously, Bosa is a huge concern. All of these guys, all
Yeah.
of those guys that are on our list there are key contributors to, where we want to ultimately end up. So it's concerning. And especially when you add to all the guys that are already on the injured list. So I think we are fortunate to be sitting where we are atop the division, even with all these injuries. But I mean, how much more attrition can we stand before it starts to show itself on the field? I guess that's the question.
Now, I don't know if anybody else did this, but I immediately went to Google and I Googled unsigned kickers.
Yep.
Who is out there for the 49ers to find and possibly bring in, kicking, like I was like, everyone plays fantasy football and I'm like looking at the kickers and I'm like, oh, Chase McLaughlin, he's actually on a team. Like we had him when he was kicking balls into the tunnel.
Bagley and Blankenship were the two names that jumped off the page at me.
Okay. So I imagine that's going to happen. Who knows about Robbie Gould? Robbie Gould is on the older side. He's not one of these young kickers, as you could tell by the tackling technique there. But I think that's when you look at how football is today. We've mentioned this before, where all these games they're coming down to the last quarter, and teams are within a touchdown of each other. A field goal, could mean the difference between, a playoff position, right? And so I think this is a pretty big thing that we need to figure out. And hopefully it's just that, Gould is going to be fine. And if he misses a week, oh, well, probably not the worst week to miss against Atlanta. But, Atlanta can actually do some things that if Atlanta watches the game today, what can they take away is like, oh, like I think we take our shots at running up the middle, because that's where the Niners are a little softer than they are everywhere else on defense with their two guys missing. But we'll see if Kinlaw is going to be back. I don't know about Armstead. They talked about maybe putting Armstead on the IR so that they could give him a month to kind of get healthy. Kinlaw, as we know, he's just not been right since the knee surgery. And if you are looking to attack, that seems to be the place to attack. And I thought Carolina actually did a pretty good job in the beginning of this game attacking the middle, and then they kind of abandoned it. I don't know exactly why. Baker Mayfield, they had him throw the ball way more than I would have had him throw the ball, especially early on, because this dude's double clutching on every throw. And we'll actually, it's a big point for me for this game to talk about him in a second. But, I don't know, that the only real softness right now in that defense seems to be up the middle. So there's stuff there. And if Atlanta can play a close game with the 49ers, and then it comes down to, a field goal here and there, I could see that being a problem. And I think, in the back of your mind, you would hope that the 49ers are a better team than Atlanta, but Atlanta at 2-3, they're only -4 net points. So they're hanging in these games.
And they're frisky.
Yeah.
They're in the game, even in the games they've lost, they've been down big and they've fought back. Even today, they were down like 21-0 or whatever, and they, ended up making it, a one-score game again. So yeah, and it's on the road and we're injured. So I mean, I don't think we're our defense, barring injury, is, I believe, the best in the league.
Yeah.
But again, we're not at a place where we can take anybody for granted, I don't
Right.
think.
Yeah. And it's because the offense, while I think today we saw some things that I wasn't really expecting, it's still so inconsistent. Like today, Carolina was predictably blitzing on third down, and for whatever reason, they were just coming in untouched. And I was like, okay, like we know they're blitzing on third down. What's going on here? But if the offense plays a B+ game, I think they're going to be fine in most of these games against these teams who are, probably closer to average than above average. But I don't know. We'll talk about this in a second, because I also thought we abandoned the run way too early in this game, considering I think they're averaging like 7 yards a carry or something like that. So
Yeah.
Also shout out to our guy Rick Feinberg, who wasn't able to watch the game today because Rick lives in Texas, and so I'm sure he got to see that Cowboys-Rams game is what he was on his television. He saw the Cowboys go into SoFi, and from what I saw, some of the tweets, they said that the Rams had to go on a silent count because it was so loud for the Cowboys, which is unfortunate if you are a Rams player there at your home park. So yeah, ultimately, I think we just have to kind of wait and see with what happens. What do you think about Ward? Like sometimes they just kind of put a club on these guys on the hand, but you're a DB, you got to be able to use both hands and both arms. And it's not like he can just sit in the pass rush and hit guys with this cast. Like he's got to have both hands. So that one's kind of scary as far as broken hands. What is that? Like probably like a 6-week injury or something?
I mean, I guess it would depend on, how severe. I mean, if you're talking about just like a fracture or if it's completely broken. So yeah, that's worrisome because, we were counting on him. They were talking about, moving him in and playing one of those safeties as a linebacker and kind of, utilizing it. It sounded to me like he was going to be an integral part of things.
Yeah.
Even though he had been injured and Gibson and Hufanga were playing well, they had plans for him, and it's unfortunate that he didn't even make it a whole drive.
Now let's move on to my next topic here, and this is probably going to sound a little bit more negative than I mean it to be. But we're going to be a little critical on things, even in games where they're pretty much in control this entire game. But I'm watching this game, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, we are lucky that Baker Mayfield is on this field, because once Bosa went down, there was an opportunity for them to stage a little bit of a comeback. But Baker Mayfield, he's got one, we talk about Jimmy kind of just being like very quick on his one target or his second guy. Baker was drop. If he didn't see who his first guy was, dump it off to Christian McCaffrey. And like, I get why Christian McCaffrey's hurt a lot. Like this guy, when he is on the field, they just find him and he's like the safety valve for every possible play. And they're leaving him in such bad situations where he's got to take a dump off. And you got like Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw reading it, knowing it's going to happen, just bearing down on you. This dude he's not going to make it the rest of the season if they continue to play this way. But Mayfield, I thought there were opportunities for him to do something. And man, like I thought, Russ, when we played Russ in that Denver game, that was just about the worst Russ that I had ever seen. But I thought Baker was even worse than Russ. Like he could not make any plays, and just the decision making, the opportunities to scramble, and being, he's kind of like, there's opportunities for him to run, and then he doesn't want to run, and like I just thought a lot of his decision making was frustrating. If you're a Carolina Panthers fan, man, you got to be like, what are we doing here with this quarterback?
Yeah. When you're talking about McCaffrey, the NBA term I thought of is his usage rate.
His usage rate, yeah,
is off the charts. And the word that comes to mind with Baker is gun shy. He really just doesn't seem sure of himself. And I don't know. He has always been, for better or worse, and a lot of people don't like that about him. Is his swagger is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it fueled him. That irrational confidence fueled his game. And if he's not sure of himself, if he's unsure of himself, I don't know that that's the Baker Mayfield that you want. You want the Baker that feels like he can make every throw and outrun every defensive end, even if it's irrational. You need him playing with that kind of confidence. And if he's shook, I PJ Walker may be your best bet until Darnold is able to come back and turn over you out of games.
Yeah.
But
you know what the Baker thing, like he was not happy coming out of the Cleveland situation. We know that he was very vocal about certain things and how that was handled. And so coming into, Carolina, like he's got a little bit of a target on his back, being so vocal about opportunities and such. And his body language, like there was so little confidence, like you said, that the crowd, and that now the crowd, there was a heavy, like the 49ers represented in that crowd, but the crowd, every time the crowd was really hard on two scenarios. Whenever Baker had a play and didn't make it, they let him know. And whenever Matt Rule decided to play it safe down, losing, they let him know. Like you could tell those are not the two most popular people in that building in today's game. And I just watch Baker and just think like, man, now this stuff is not easy, obviously, or else we'd have tons of QBs who are all 100 quarterback rating and all this stuff. But there is you have your really good players, then you kind of have the middle, and then there's everybody else. The quarterback play in the league this year has been very up and down.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's the defenses being ahead of the offenses early or this early, and maybe by midseason that may change, but they're the quarterback play, and I'm watching Baker and I go, okay, in this scenario, I'm very thankful for Jimmy, because at least Jimmy knows, like he knows that he is not going to be able to do certain things, and so he kind of stays in his lane. Now, sometimes because of that, also he will make the Jimmy throws, but I think there were only maybe 2 Jimmy throws that I counted today where I was like, oh no, here we go. And so he even had that to a minimum, and they were attacking the middle of the field. So, we're hard on Jimmy, but at the same time, it's like, okay, he's way better than Baker Mayfield. So I get it. And I see the difference.
Yeah. Jimmy, he had one turnover where he throw that I counted, but then he had 3 big time throws.
Yeah.
So if you can get that from Jimmy, for me, that has always been my criticism of him, is that if you play the way he plays, you have to be able to mix in some big plays because, the variance is if he's going to be mid to bad, you got to have some big time plays to kind of offset that. Otherwise, mid to bad ends up as below average. You can be average if you throw like today was, I'm to the point now where Jimmy's never gonna be like a statistical darling in terms
Right.
of 300 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. That's just not what we do, and that's not what he does. But today, if he could replicate this week to week, I would have no problem. I'm not saying if he could replicate this week to week that I'm, down for like a 3-year extension or anything.
You can get a jersey. You can wear your Jimmy jersey on the
Nah.
podcast.
but this is fine. He was good. He was good today. He's been good the last 2 weeks. So there. The people that say I'm a Jimmy hater, both 2 weeks in a row, I'm giving him his props.
Yeah.
He's been good. More than just fine. Fine is my thing. Jimmy's fine.
Yeah.
He was good.
Yeah.
He was good. Like you said, I was a bit concerned with our lack of running the ball. I mean, and not just because I had over 29 and a half carries, but we were really effective. We ended up at like, 5.8 per carry, but there was a time there we were like at 7+.
Yeah.
So we were really running the ball well, and then all of a sudden we went away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. They got to 29, so you just missed missed on it. They got to 29. The 2 Jimmy throws I counted were the first 2 throws to Debo, which I thought one of them was a dropped pick, and Jimmy seems to have one of those a game these days. The other one was it was off to the point of where it could have got. I think Debo got a hand on it, and it could have gotten
it was behind him.
Got picked. Yeah. I think there was another one where something with Kittle, but that might have been tipped. Not now that I think about it. So other than those, like Jimmy makes a throw to my guy, Tevin Coleman, and it's the blitz is coming. They got 1-on-1 with Coleman, and he throws it pretty much to where only Coleman can catch it, or they're going to get pushed out of bounds. So I thought that was strong. That was, and then you go on Twitter, and it's so funny because you have the people who are on Twitter saying, "Oh, great throw by Jimmy," and then you have the other people on Twitter going like, that was that was just throwing that up for grabs." And I think that's funny just because there's such a bipolar thing with 49er fans and Jimmy Garoppolo. I thought it was a good throw. I thought it was a good play. That was a good idea. He knew where his one option was, what the play was, and I think Shanahan said, they wanted to send Coleman deep at least on a go once in the game, so that worked out. But I when I see quarterbacks like Baker, I go, okay. It makes me feel better about Jimmy because, like you said, if Jimmy can play like he did these last 2 games with the way that the defense plays, we're going to be in all of these games. And so kudos to him for playing because, the flip side is like, yeah, Baker Mayfield, you don't have that same confidence with that guy.
And you look, I mean, okay, this is week 5. And so, we're next week is, a third of the way through the season.
Yeah.
And you look around the NFC, man, Philly, you got Philly who's undefeated and they look good. They look like they're a good team.
Yes.
But after that, it's like us and the Packers did not look good today. That was eye-opening what the Giants did to them. So, you look up, we are the second best team in the NFC.
You're not giving any credit to Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys. The only reason I bring it up is because of their defense. Because if you look at the points against, they are second in the NFC to the 49ers.
Their defense is legit. Micah Parsons is, he's that dude. But I just think they can be had. I think we match up well with them.
100%.
Because their offense, and kudos to Cooper Rush. He has done what they've asked him to do. He's managed the game well, but I think defensively, what they've been able to do offensively. But to your point you made earlier, they have been kind of just lining up and running Pollard and Elliott at guys. So, I mean, if they could find something there, but their offensive line has been kind of suspect. It seems like a common refrain all around the league. Just about everybody, very few teams, are counting their offensive line as a strength. Either their tackles are bad, or their interior is bad, or all of them are bad. So that's just a common refrain, but I think we match up well versus. So the Cowboys are in the mix for sure. I don't mean to give them short shrift, but I think as good as their defense is, ours is better. And I like our skill players better than I like theirs. I was very happy that, that was a thing that, I was kind of pounding the table for on Facebook this week, was getting Kittle more involved. And they did that. They did
right
that today.
from the first play.
Yeah, they did that today. And it's needed. We can't, we don't want to fall into the trap that the Rams have fallen into, or like Carolina has fallen into, where, it's just throw it to Debo, whenever we need to make a play. I mean, he's that dude, but we've got other guys who can make plays. So we need to, get Ayuk going. We need to
you could argue that Ayuk has actually been playing better than Debo in the first 5 games. He at least more consistently. Debo's had few drops, but some of it is, like you said, Jimmy seems to go in his direction when all else fails. And so there's sometimes like that screen today, kind of leaving him hanging. I'm just happy that Debo gets out of that game with what looked to be a Charlie horse. I think he was shaking his arm out. But
he is so explosive when he gets the ball in his hands. I could, if I was Jimmy, I would probably, when in doubt, try to get it to Debo as many times as possible too. But we do have other guys. Kittle is just as explosive after the catch, and Ayuk is, maybe not just as explosive after.
If he catches it in stride,
that's hyperbole.
If he catches it in stride, it's
nobody's as good as Debo, but he is talented as well.
Yeah.
After the catch.
What about JJ? JJ made 2 big catches where he was making guys miss, carrying guys.
Big boy.
It's almost like, it's almost like, you only have so many footballs to go around, but in a different offense, he would be kind of like the safety valve for some QBs, just because he's so big and he's so long. But yeah, so they have the pieces, and it's
he's
just
an excellent fourth option. I mean,
my gosh,
golly.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then we were thinking about who's going to be the third down back this year. Is it going to be Hasty? And then they cut him, and then it looked like it was going to be who was coming in after Mitchell. I forget. So some of all the guys are injured now. But anyway, like we may have found that guy with Coleman. Like Coleman, when everyone gets healthy, I kind of wonder how do what do you do with him? Because if it's Mason, who seems to be now maybe like the 4th guy, actually he's the 3rd guy because Marlon Mack was not on the active game roster. But like when Mitchell comes back, when Davis Price comes back, can you get rid of Coleman knowing that he can run to the outside and that he is the guy who you can throw to on third down? Like, it seems like that's kind of what they were missing with their running backs, but I wonder who's going to get squeezed out there when all those guys are healthy.
He was on the street, so I would think that they, unless he just continues to show out, and but there's so many injuries
Yeah.
that you may be right that we can't just continue to stash him on the practice squad. That that some other team comes a calling if he's the odd man out and he is put back on the practice squad. Somebody might just sign him off there to be, on their roster. But he looked really good. And hell, Wilson looked good today.
Wilson was awesome.
He
Oh
was
my
balling,
God.
So yeah, that's a good problem to have. It's a good problem, when Mitchell comes back. They seem to, clearly Ty Davis Price is a talented dude. They like Mason. So it's a good problem to have if we could just simply get, hell, Mac was a Pro Bowler. So
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't, ever since he had that injury, he hasn't really played to that level. But still, this is a good problem to have if we could ever get those guys healthy.
To answer Rick's question, I believe so. Rick wanted to know how many running backs were active today. So Wilson, Mason, Juszczyk, and Coleman, I think, were the
And I'm
active
ready.
RBs.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and the only one who was inactive was Marlon Mack. I think that's how it worked out. Yeah, I tried to reference put a round and round reference in there for Tevin Coleman. That was the first Tevin Campbell hit right there, Quincy Jones. All right, so let's talk about I want to talk about the last big point I want to talk about is just kind of what we're talking about with the offense, because it seemed early on, and I thought Carolina's game plan was right on in the beginning, because what they did is they just stacked that on first down. They were just like, okay, we're going to dare you guys to pass. And so the Niners did. We saw more play action today than we've seen all year long. First play was to get Kittle the football. Kittle, I think most of Kittle's catches came in like the first quarter. And they were passing, and some of this caused the time of possession to not be in their favor because they weren't running the ball as much. And I was like, okay, I get it. I get why we're passing, because it's open and they are daring us to pass. But I still thought there were so many good options to run the football just to keep that clock going, because the special teams kind of screwed up the defense a little bit today, where the only big plays the Panthers made early in the game were on the kick returns. And so then the defense has got to, their backs are on the, in the other territory right away. And so I was like, okay, well, these guys are having to play on the other side of the field. Let's run the ball a little bit more so we can give them a little bit of a rest. But nope, they came back out firing. Like, the middle of the field was open and they were attacking the middle of the field. But I was kind of interested in what you thought about the decision to go so heavy in the passing game, because Jimmy has, I think Jimmy had 30 throws today, 8.4 yards, average yards per attempt. And, it works. It worked in their favor to the point where they won. He also got sacked a couple times, and he got hit a couple different times. One of them, he got hit where I was like, oh, there's his shoulder. Brock Purdy, get ready. But he got back up. But yeah, just your thoughts on sort of the offensive game plan today.
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned that, because it seems like we have, a lot of people in our fan base have forgotten, that's a concern.
Yeah.
Jimmy is injury prone. So, I mean, that has to be a concern, and that the more, he's not a runner. So the more you drop him back, the more you increase, the odds of something, unfortunate happening to him. While I would like to see them run more, if they're gonna pass, I think the distribution was about right. Debo at 9, Kittle at 6, Ayuk at 4. You know, and Campbell. I mean, yeah, Coleman got 3 targets. So I mean, I saw what Kyle was seeing in terms of what the Panthers were were giving, but it seemed like we were able to take what we wanted in the run game as well. So, like you say, if we, especially once we are, in control, just pound it and let the clock run and try to get out of here. But Jimmy didn't play bad. He didn't make Kyle look foolish for throwing the ball. He didn't turn it over, which is a big thing. Like you say, there were a couple of times where it, stunted drives, and we didn't, it hurt us in terms of just controlling the clock.
Yeah.
And, giving Carolina more opportunities. But again, if you're leaning on our defense, I guess, that's fine. But moving forward, especially after this game, after the Falcons next week, we kind of move into like what I believe is the toughest stretch of our schedule. It's, against teams who have, more potent offenses and turnover hungry defenses. I think it's
You're circling that Sunday game against Kansas City. I know that's one of them that you're circling.
absolutely, and then the Chargers as well. Jimmy again dropping back and getting hit concerns me. Jimmy and his kind of errant throws against better secondaries concerns me. So the more we can run the ball, and it just seems like our offensive line is much more comfortable when they're firing off and hitting people than they are dropping back in pass protection.
Yeah, Jalen Moore looked a little bit like, shouldn't we be running the ball a little bit
Oh.
more?
Oh my goodness. And McKivitz is, he's on IR, so he's gone for at least 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And who knows when Trent is they say that injury is a 4 to 6 week injury.
So somebody wrote, maybe in my Mayoko, I don't know, Mayoko or Barrows, those are the guys that I pay attention to, but they said that he was without a walking boot before the game, and he was on the field tossing passes or goofing off or whatever. So they thought, maybe he will be back sooner than later, like maybe on the earlier end than the later end. But at the same time, who knows when it comes to that stuff? Because I know Jennifer Lee Chan had tweeted, "Oh yeah, Nick Bosa's just talking to folks on the sideline, so it doesn't look terrible." And it wasn't terrible, but he didn't come back in the game. So you're trying to be, you're trying to eyeball from the booth on whether or not how these guys feel or whatever. But
and then we've had this phenomenon recently of guys getting up and walking off the field, and then it turns out the ACL is completely torn.
Yeah.
So it's
I just remember Klay Thompson in the NBA Finals
trying to
jumping up and down and running in the tunnel, and I'm like, dude, it's done. Your knee is done.
And then, of course, the classic one is Kobe trying to play on a torn Achilles. So you can't.
That dude's shooting free throws to show how tough he is.
You can't trust these guys to be rational in these circumstances. So,
by the way, this is the quickest aside that I will ever make. But there's a doc on Netflix called Redeem Team, and it is about the 2008 Olympic team. Where they had lost the gold medal, or they actually didn't even have the gold medal game, but they were the bronze winning team in 2004, which was the first time since the pros had taken over in the Olympics. And so then 2008, they bring in Coach K, and then Kobe decides that he's going to play. And really nice story, nice little love story to Kobe for that doc as well. So good doc to watch. At first, I was like, man, LeBron's in this a lot. And then I saw the credits at the end. Executive producers, Mav Carter, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade.
So there you go.
Okay, back to football. Sorry, I had to throw that in. But so the thing that I thought, now when I'm watching this game, I'm going like, okay, Kyle is letting Jimmy rip a little bit. And it's because I thought Kyle was seeing the opportunity to just make crazy plays in the pass game. So that's why I thought he was doing it, because he's just seeing things in the middle of the field that are just like you can't be an offensive guy and go like, man, the middle of the field's wide open yet, so we're gonna keep running. That's what I thought. So I imagine that there was something there for him to want to throw that much, because they threw 30 times and they ran 29 times. One of those runs was the Brock Purdy kneel down at the end of the game, and then the other run was I guess Jimmy got credited for a run rather than a sack. So technically 27 rushing attempts versus 30 throws, and their ratio in the season is the other way around. They're only like one of 3 teams who are more run heavy than they are pass heavy. So there was something there for Kyle to see.
And our guy Jimmy was taking shots, 20 yards downfield. He took a shot at Danny Gray, whom I thought was just going to be relegated to win sprints with Jimmy as quarterback.
Yeah.
But again, that has always been my criticism of Jimmy, is at least take the shots. I mean, obviously we don't want them throwing them in places where they are fodder for interceptions, but we need, in our offense, you have to have a deep threat. You have to, you're not optimizing the offense with the way we are able to run it if you don't make the defense respect the deep passing game. You have to put them in that bind that, okay, if you decide to bring those safeties up to run support, you're gonna pay a price for it in the deep passing game. And so often Jimmy doesn't even look at it. So it's encouraging to see him at least attempting them.
Yeah, no, and for the most part, like, looked like good decisions. It looked like those guys were open. And also the receiving core, knowing how talented they are, it is not a bad thing for those guys to feel like, they are, that there are opportunities for them. Even though Debo did say, or the announcers quoted Debo as saying, if you don't block, you're not going to get a chance to catch. So Rick,
if Jimmy could just clean up the misses, I think we can go far. So just try to stop.
Let's get my guy Danny Gray on a play action and see how far Jimmy could throw it. That's what I want to see. The throw that he did, he kind of, I don't think he thought there was anything there because there were 2 DBs there, but I want to see the opportunity to get Danny Gray out there, just let him run. I would love to see that, whether it's the next game or whatever, but I want to see that shot. So Rick asked what the perceptions or grades of offensive line, like the PFL scores, or what is it? The Pro Football Focus. Sorry, PFF. PFL is an MMA organization. The PFF grades, we'll have to see those, but just from the eyeballing it, it's kind of like how I feel normally, which is when they are running the ball, the offensive line does really well, and when they have to drop back more often than not, then you can sort of see the holes there. I thought Jimmy also did a pretty good job of kind of both getting rid of the ball timely without, kind of not looking where he's throwing, where sometimes he will do that. But he had an idea and got rid of it. And also, he's not a guy who's going to dance out of the pocket, but he can move up. Like he's got, if he's good at, if he can be good at stepping up, he can create opportunities there. And then sometimes he'll take a little bit of an opportunity to run, like he did in the touchdown that got called back. I thought that was a pretty good play, but I just sort of felt, just by eyeballing it without seeing what some of these other guys who are grading this stuff looking at, I thought, running the ball, they look great. And when they were throwing, it was not as great.
Yeah. I mean, that was my perception as well. Both Banks had a couple penalties. McClinchy had one. Brendel, I mean, he is just not a very physical guy. So I'm just assuming that he is the choice because he's smart and can help with, getting the calls and getting everything organized. Because anytime, it just seems like stouter defensive tackles kind of just have their way with him. So I don't know what's going on. I don't think Brunskill got any snaps this week. They were, Burford really struggled last week, and they were kind of alternating in and out, but I didn't see him in there at all this week, at either tackle or guard. So that's interesting. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what the PFF grades say.
All right, let's talk about player of the game. Now, for me, I think it comes down to three guys. Mooney Ward, I thought, had an excellent game. There were a couple plays where I was like, wow, a lesser than corner loses that battle. And because he is as good as he is, unfortunately for Baker Mayfield, he thwarted a couple of plays that I thought were actually really good plays for the offense, but he came out of nowhere. And, he's got those long arms that come in at the last second, like a time. It's like a timing thing. So the ball's coming, then all of a sudden the ball and the arm are there. And so I can imagine that makes it really hard for the receiver. Of course, you got Mosley with the big play on defense. The second week in a row, they get a pick six into the end zone. You could even say Garoppolo, because it's sort of the ball starts and stops with him. But I'm gonna go with Jeff Wilson, because I thought he made the biggest plays. I thought he was just about as good as we've ever seen him, and he's had some good games over the years. But man, when you can run for 7 yards a pop, and he had the touchdown, he had the long 41-yard play, and this is why I was like, can we get this guy like 5 more carries maybe? But that's when they're playing their best ball, is when they're racking up, these 5 and 6 and 7 yards a carry. So I'm leaning Jeff Wilson for my player of the game. What about you?
So I kind of did it offense, defense. For me, honorable mention would have been Juwan Jennings. But yes, Jeff Wilson was clearly my offensive player and probably my player overall. Mooney Ward was, for defense, was, he had, by my count, 3 pass defenses, but he gave up a big time play.
He did give up one.
You had Mosley, who was all over the place with the pick six, the touchdown. He had a tackle for loss, but then he also had a penalty. So my guy on defense, I went ahead and went with Warner, because he led the team in tackles.
And he led the team in solo tackles. He had 7 solo tackles to, I think, the next highest. Like, there's a couple of guys with 4 solos. But Greenlaw gets 11, but only 4 solo. Warner had 9 with 7 solo. He also had a sack, and then the 2 tackles for loss too. So yeah, that's a great pick.
Yeah. So Warner and Wilson were my guys, and I guess for offense, defense, and then for overall, it would have been Wilson.
Yeah,
he moved the chains 7 times by my count, which is awesome.
And Shelvin has a great point, because he says Wilson proved me wrong about being an every down back.
Absolutely.
Now I'm not sure. We'll see when the Niners play like these really good teams, because the one concern with him historically has been fumbling. I know it was like they mentioned it. It was a thing in college, and when he carries that ball, that's the first thing kind of in my head is like, it's that ball looks like it, like the defenses look like they're going after it.
Yeah.
But he has been such a pleasant surprise. And I know Elijah Mitchell is a different player and he's a more explosive player.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there hasn't been as big of a drop off as I think people expected when Mitchell went down. And Wilson is just doing his job, and he's doing it. He's doing it well. And today, you saw kind of the best version of him, and that
Exactly.
was nice
But
to see.
see, the key is, like you said, the best version of himself. Because to be fair, when he came back last year, he was not the same player.
No,
He did not have the juice that he showed today last season. So that was
yes,
my concern with him being installed as that second back behind Mitchell, is that if that guy from last season shows up, that's a problem. But he
yes,
has shown a burst, and someone had mentioned early on in the season that Kyle had even mentioned a concern about him being an every down back in terms of injury and being able to just hold up to that kind of workload. Not he, how Kyle is. He wasn't. It was in terms of saying that we need contributions from everybody. We can't
right.
expect he wasn't shit talking Jeff Wilson. He was just saying we need everybody else to contribute because we can't expect this guy to carry the load. But he did it today. So, but Tevin Campbell, I mean, Tevin, I said it. I did it. Tevin Coleman was a pleasant surprise as well. I
Yeah,
mean, to come off the street and play as well as he did
and he looked
today,
fast.
he
Looked
really did.
fast.
He really looked good. He
Yeah.
really looked good.
All right, so the Niners are staying out that way. They'll be in West Virginia and they're not coming back to the West Coast. And they go to Atlanta on Sunday. It is a morning game, and so that means we will be back actually in the afternoon. But the one thing that I was thinking, the one thing that scares me, let's say, about Atlanta, Marcus Mariota is the running QB that we can sometimes have problems with. We saw Justin Fields, who has the worst completion percentage of any starting quarterback in the league, and yet he was still able to make plays with his feet, enough so to beat the 49ers in the first week. And then historically, we've had trouble with Russ. We've had trouble with Kyler. Mariota isn't, I wouldn't consider him at their level or at their best level. But, he, like today, they kept it close with Tampa. I know they scored some late touchdowns to make it close. They were actually down 21-0 at one point, and then they scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. But Mariota, 7 carries, 61 yards. Throwing the ball is you're fine with it, right? You're fine with him throwing the football, and that's where you want to keep him, and you don't want him to run around. And then the other thing I worry about is we love to hit the quarterback a little bit after that slide, and then we get the 15 tacked on. Like, that's the stuff that scares me.
That's
But
Greenlaw right there.
yeah, exactly. the aggressiveness, like they're just an aggressive team. But yeah, 100%. He had another penalty today where McCaffrey's kind of like doing the thing where he's like, was I really tackled? And then Greenlaw is just like, he's like holding him. I'm like, of course, it's Greenlaw holding him.
I was really impressed with Mariota. He's got some juice. He for someone who was injured and a backup for such a long time. I mean, throwing the ball kind of is what it is, but when he sprints out, I mean, you got to honor it. I mean, he's an athlete. So that's going to be interesting, because like you say, that has been something that has given us trouble in the past.
They are without Cordarrelle Patterson, who was, he's not their Debo, but he's kind of like a Swiss Army knife for them.
Mm-hmm.
He is out. He's hurt, and the reason I know this is because he was on my fantasy team, so I was very sad about that. And so Tyler Algier is he had 13 carries today. Caleb Huntley had 8. Avery Williams had 3, including one of the touchdowns. It's really about keeping Mariota in the pocket, stopping the run, because they have a list of guys who caught the football today, who I think you watch NBA, the TNT NBA show, Inside the NBA, where they do the thing with Chuck, where they basically ask Chuck if he knows which team this player is on, and Chuck like misses like all of them. Like that's the Atlanta Falcons receiving core, like just a bunch of names where you're like, you have to be a really big time college football fan to even recognize some of these names. So that's kind of where I'm leaning, is they should take care of business. The one caveat is staying disciplined on defense and not trying to hit a home run when the home run is not there, because the Bears game is kind of in the back of my mind, but without the crazy rain and stuff, the 49ers offense will probably be much better than in that game, at least. So,
well, that I think that is going to be the litmus test for us weekly, is if we don't shoot ourselves in the foot with penalties and turnovers, we should be okay in just about every game. We can't, like you say, the Chicago game being the blueprint of how it can all go wrong for us. We can't have that happen.
Yes, exactly. All right, so we are 5 weeks through this. Niners are 3-2 right now, atop the NFC West, and I think every team other than the Niners in the NFC West lost today.
They did,
which is a good thing. A good thing for Seattle's been frisky ever since we played them. By the way, they're just running and gunning, man. Geno Smith,
he is on fire. He is really playing well. I see he had like a 70-yard touchdown pass to Lockett today. He's out there. He is just out there balling.
Yeah, they have given up the most points in the NFL through five games so far, but man, they're scoring the football too. So Rashad Penny was looking good, but then I saw he got dinged up today. And I don't know, man. Kyler was rocking that green suit today before the game started, and I thought that meant he was going to come strong, but they did not win that game. Philadelphia stays undefeated. And yeah, it was 20-17 though. They came back and they tied it late. So they played close, but man, when you wear that green suit, I feel like you got to win that game or else. So
yeah,
all right. So you and I will be back next week after the Atlanta game, hopefully in good spirits like today, where the only negativity we're really doing is nitpicking. I like those moments. And then tomorrow on Monday, if you're a Giants fan on this same channel, Brad Evans and myself will be back to kind of summarize the entire baseball season for the Giants. And the wild card has already started. Today's the last day of the wild card. And then the division series is start next week. So we'll be talking about all that stuff. And then, I will be out all of next week until Rod and I come back, because I'll be in New York with my wife's family stuff. But so no death lineup this week, but otherwise we'll be right back. And I'm about to go watch some Warriors right now. They play the Lakers right now on television. So,
oh wow, okay,
all right. So for Rod, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace out, you guys.